Good afternoon. Great to be at the Florida State Fair. All you Floridians watching now, you got a couple weeks to be able to come here and enjoy. The weather is great. You all didn't get it that bad down here in Tampa Bay, but a couple weeks ago, up in North Florida, particularly Northwest Florida, we got a mini blizzard, which is not something that we're used to. And so we actually declared a state of emergency. When the hurricanes will stage the utility trucks, search and rescue, we were actually staging snow plows in the state of Florida. We had the salt for the roads, all this stuff. But it turned out the previous record for snowfall in the state of Florida's history was 4 inches in Milton, Florida. I think it was like in the 1940s or 50s. A couple weeks ago, we broke that record, and Milton, Florida set a new record of 10 inches of snow on the ground there. If you looked at the Panhandle beaches, they were covered with snow. There had been up to that point in January more snow in Milton, Florida than in Anchorage, Alaska. Where's the global warming when you need it? We were able to do, but I'll tell you, it's interesting. If that had happened in like Minnesota or Wisconsin, they just would have shrugged. In Tallahassee, we got like 2 inches, and my kids were out of school for 3 days. And I'm like, you guys probably could have got back in, but you guys didn't get it that bad, but we did do that, but we handled it like we always do. Now I'm trying to think here. Obviously, we've got a lot of great fair food that's traditional. People will do the Amish donut. They'll do some of the funnel cakes. And it's always good. But there's always new things that are brought in for the first time. And so I'm here. I'm a little conflicted because when I see something like cotton candy tea and these Jolly Rancher creamsicles, I can make my kids pretty happy if Daddy delivers that back to them today. The problem is by about 8:45 or 9 o'clock at night, I do not think they will end up being asleep. I think they'll be running off the wall. So I got to make a game time decision. Am I going to bring that back? Am I not going to bring that back? And they do like the sugary stuff. I did notice, though, I don't know if you guys have seen yet, they now have this year a soul food egg roll. Mac and cheese, chicken, and collard greens, a deep fried egg roll. That may be something that I have to bring back for the First Lady and me. And then, of course, not only do they have these big cinnamon rolls, but they have salted caramel and then strawberry and cream. So that may be something that we have to do. We'll see what happens. I can tell you, though, that this is a great experience. My family's been able to come for many years. Kids are in school. Wasn't in the cards for us to come today, but I'm happy to be here with y'all. I'm also happy that we live in the state, the top performing state in the United States of America on so many different metrics. We are #1 since 2019. We've led the nation in economic growth. Our economy has grown 30% since 2019. That's twice as what the nation's economy as a whole has done. We have led the country in net in-migration, which is a sign that people are voting with their feet and that we're doing good things. Although I'll tell you, I don't ask anyone to come here. I mean, there's a lot of people. There's issues we got to do with roads and schools and everything. But I think the fact that people have made those decisions, they're going to places that are well governed. We're #1 in higher education, #1 in overall education by U.S. News and World Report. We're also very fiscally responsible. So it used to be New York State had way more people than the state of Florida. Now, New York State has about 19.5 million people. We're closing in on 23.5 million people in the state of Florida. So we've got almost 4 million more people than the state of New York does. And yet, New York's budget is more than twice the size of the state of Florida. And yet when people move from New York, they tell me, you guys have better roads, you guys have better services, and you guys have better schools. So where is all that money going towards that they're taxing people and spending people? So in fact, Florida's budget with 23+ million people is less than the budget of New York City all by itself. So we're doing it right. We're running big surpluses. I think every year since I've been governor, we've had sizable, but it really took off in 21 when Wilton was Senate President, 22, and into the present, where we just had these, massive reserves. We've tripled the rainy day fund from 2019, and we now have, I'm always thinking, what can you do, right? I mean, you want to do good things. We've done a lot on education. We've done a lot on environment, natural resources, making sure that everything runs smoothly in terms of the water in the state of Florida. We have done major transportation. We put billions of dollars to accelerate road projects. I mean, some of the stuff in Tampa Bay wasn't even supposed to start till next decade. That's going to be done 5-10 years ahead of schedule in other parts around the state. Happy to do that. But we've also taken the initiative to accelerate repayment of our outstanding state debt. So from the time I was governor till now, if you take all the debt that the state of Florida has had since the inception of the state in the 1840s, we've paid down 36% of that. The current budget I submitted will work with the legislature to continue that. We have the opportunity with this next fiscal year to have paid down 49% of the state's historical debt. Our guys are smart. They'll buy the bonds at a discount on the open market. They retire it. So we end up saving hundreds of millions of dollars in interest costs. And the result has been Florida has the lowest per capita debt of any state in all 50 United States. So we're proud of that. Now, how much different is that than Washington, D.C.? And I think that what you're seeing with like what Elon Musk is doing, they're going into these agencies with these Doge guys, and they're identifying and rooting out taxpayer dollars that are being wasted by the many hundreds of millions, maybe even billions of dollars, depending on the agency. So you have these things like USAID. They'll talk about a big game about what it's accomplishing, but really, I mean, it's almost like a corrupt scheme where they're funneling money to political supporters and trying to promote an ideological agenda. And so they're doing a good job exposing, really, really deep corruption into how the federal administrative apparatus actually operates. And I think that's great. And when the president announced that Elon was going to do this back during the campaign, a lot of people were like, well, cutting spending, only Congress can do that. And so, you run $2 trillion deficits. You actually have to get Congress to reduce spending. That's not something they've been willing to do. And I think that still is a big question mark. But on identifying how this stuff is being laundered throughout the bureaucracy, I think this is a really, really positive development. But I also think you have to point out this fact that the only reason it is developed to this point where you have some of these organizations funneling money, they're even funneling it to favorable media outlets to be able, presumably, to get good coverage. How did it get to the point where any of this would be happening with your tax dollars? And the basic reason is that Congress has failed at its core responsibilities to use the power of the purse and conduct the oversight that they are empowered with under the Constitution, because what they do is, when it comes time to spend money, so like in the state, we have a budget every year, legislature's only in part-time, but when things happen, I remember my first few years as governor, we had problems with one of the organizations that was doing our anti-domestic violence initiatives. Corruption, laundering money. Like the next week, the legislature came in and zeroed that out. I also have line item veto. If there's things that don't pass muster, I can do that. So we have all ways in the state to make sure tax dollars are being spent well. And obviously, we have a very limited budget, even though we do the core things. In Washington, they pass these massive thousands of pages of legislation, omnibus bills. Nobody can even read it. They literally will negotiate behind closed doors. They put it out, and then 8 hours later, you're supposed to vote on a 2,500-page bill. And it's not even just like reading 2,500 pages in the sports section or something of the newspaper, because what it'll be is we're going to amend Section 35A3. So you have to cross-reference. If you really wanted to know what's going on, you'd have to cross-reference. It would take you days to be able to do it, and then that's trillions and trillions of dollars. Sometimes they'll just do continuing resolutions where the money's on autopilot. So that's for years. You look at the last 15 years, Republicans have controlled the U.S. House of Representatives more than Democrats have controlled the House of Representatives, and that's where the power of the purse is. And so it's been a failure in Congress to actually safeguard the money and use their power of the purse to police bad behavior. So the bureaucrats, they know the federal government's on autopilot. They know they're going to do these massive omnibus or continuing resolutions, and there's really nothing that's going to happen. So, of course, they are going to engage in bad behavior. That's human nature when there's not any types of checks and balances. So I think what Elon is doing is really good. I think it's great to be able to see a lot of the corruption being rooted out. But ultimately, the people you elect and send to Congress, they need to do a better job of protecting your tax dollars and defunding corrupt agencies in the first place. That was the whole logic of our constitutional system, that you would never have to fear what the government would do, because if you elect people, they can simply take away the money that executive arm of the government was doing. And they haven't been able to do a good job. So we should not have a fourth branch of government. We should not have a bureaucracy that's immune from any accountability. The DOGE is kind of the first really significant intrusion into the bureaucrats' aura of invincibility, that somehow they can't be touched. And you're seeing the apple cart be upended. And so that's a great sign. A lot of the other executive actions that President Trump has done have been really, really good. And, you know, Wilton and me and the legislature, we're very familiar with all this stuff because we've been doing this for many years. They just did the women's sports executive order, which was great, and we passed that legislation. I think Wilton was Senate president 4 years ago to protect women's sports, and we're proud to have done that. So there is something to the logic that the country will be better off the more it looks like Florida. So I think there's been a lot of great things that are underway in the Trump administration. I think the DOGE is very exciting. And also on this issue of emergency response, President was getting flack because the media is saying, oh, you know, he wants to dismantle FEMA and leave the states to fend for themselves. First of all, when I approach these disasters, I look at what levers are available, and I just pull whatever lever. So if the federal government has a program that can benefit people, I'll push that lever. If they don't, then that's fine. I'll figure out another way to do it. So if they told the states, hey, you guys are going to handle these things, we got massive surplus. I'd be able to budget for it. We would be able to handle whatever they throw at us in Florida. But that's not what the president is actually talking about doing. What he's talking about doing makes a lot of sense. If you had a disaster, and you can look at, like, what's the typical cost of a Category 4 hurricane or any of these other things that happen, and look to see how much FEMA has actually spent on those throughout the past. And then if a disaster comes, you can take whatever that amount is typically, send 80% of that block grant to the state, cut the bureaucracy of FEMA out entirely, and that money will go further than it currently does at greater amounts going through FEMA's bureaucracy. So that's what he's talking about doing. And we would be able to administer this so much quicker. You've got folks with Milton and Helene who are still battling FEMA on all these different things. It's a nasty bureaucracy. So if we can remove the bureaucracy, they don't even need to give us, I mean, we can handle it. That's the decision they make. But I don't think that's I think what they want to do is block grant money. You give me a fraction of what you normally spend. It'll go much further, much quicker. And we will be able to get the job done. And if you think about these more recent hurricanes, we had Hurricane Helene that hit. It did a lot of damage with the storm surge up on the west coast of Florida. In particular, it hit the Big Bend, really, really powerful. And yet, 36 hours, 48 hours after that, no one was even talking about Florida. They were all talking about Georgia and North Carolina, especially Western North Carolina, and that's partially because we had the utility truck stage. We had search and rescue. We did what needed to be done. Things got stabilized. Power restoration was, at that time, was the most rapid restoration that had ever occurred. Milton was even more rapid at 4.2 million over a period of basically a handful of days. So we were 36 hours after Helene hits, we're looking, things are stabilized, and I got people, there are a lot of Floridians that have places in Western North Carolina. In fact, if you go to Western North Carolina mountains in the summer, you would think you were in Florida when you run into people, because I'd run into all these people, and they would say, "We're glad you're our governor," and they're up in North Carolina over the summer. So I knew there was going to be issues there just from our state's footprint. So we have our Florida State Guard is out rescuing people in North Carolina a couple days after Helene hits, and the people were very, very appreciative. But some of them were like, well, wait a minute, why is Florida here doing this? Why don't we have others? But there was I think a mistake made in North Carolina to rely on FEMA to do some of those operational things. And in Florida, we don't rely on FEMA for any of that. I mean, the preparation, the search and rescue, the response, the recovery, particularly 48 hours out and 72 hours after, that is a local and state partnership that we do. FEMA can serve as a bank account to reimburse our locals, to provide individual assistance. But we would never rely on FEMA to do some of the things we've done, whether it's rebuilding bridges, conducting search and rescue, none of that stuff. So I think what they're looking to do with the Trump administration is going to be very positive for Florida. If the media is spinning it that somehow it's going to be negative, they're not giving you the truth about what the administration is contemplating doing. We've got to get to a point in this country where we stop allowing the bureaucracy to grind everything to a halt. We can't have bureaucracy overwhelm the purpose of why we're doing some of these government actions to begin with, and block granting the money to the states for FEMA, I think is a really, really good step in the right direction. We'll worry about the power, we'll worry about the rescues, we'll worry about all that, and then we'll help people get back on their feet without having to worry about FEMA and its really, really insufferable bureaucracy. Now, speaking of hurricane response, we had the legislature in for special session last week. A lot more meat on the bone on that one, and we'll get it done, but that's all good. But one of the things I wanted to do was whatever the outstanding hurricane needs, including from our agriculture sector, I wanted to get that money out the door now. Why would you wait till the regular budget and then have the money available July 1st? We also had people that are approved for the My Safe Florida Home Rebuilding Program. Program ran out of money. We wanted to get that replenished so that people could make the necessary rebuilding of their homes, harden it, and that's helped moderate insurance costs. It's helped moderate hurricane risk and all these other things. None of that was taken up by the legislature. I was disappointed because I think that if you do need relief, then I think we should get it out now. So we look to see what can we do to help in the intervening period, and I'm pleased to announce that I am putting more funding through our emergency powers into the state's agriculture and aquaculture recovery loan program. So this is interest-free loans of up to $500,000. The repayment is incredibly flexible. We basically just want people to be able to be made whole as quickly as possible. We're not going to be worried about, twisting arms to get the money back in the door. And it's a way to serve maybe as a bridge until the legislature is able to more fully address the needs of not just our agriculture industry after these storms, but also homeowners and other folks throughout the state of Florida who got hit very hard. We are the most resilient state in the country. Think about what's happened. 2022, Hurricane Ian, Category 5. 2023, Idalia, Category 4. Then we have two major hurricanes back to back between Helene and Milton, and yet people deal with it, they get up, and they work to move forward. In Pinellas, I was asking Kevin Guthrie, who's our Division of Emergency Management Chief, what about the debris in like some of these areas? Because we got the Biden administration to give us 100% reimbursement for the local governments for doing the debris. And so they're picking up debris, and they've gotten about 95% of the eligible debris has been picked up, and if they're able to get the rest before the deadline, which is pretty soon, it will qualify as the most rapid debris cleanup in the history of the state. Now, we had to take some extraordinary measures from the state because we had Helene. That really left most of the debris on the Pinellas and Manatee and Sarasota County beaches. But then we had Milton bearing down, and we're like, okay, you know, you have all this debris there. What's going to happen if Milton rolls in? So we did emergency response with our Department of Transportation. We paused all of our projects. We moved all of our dump trucks to the Tampa Bay area, and we got contractors to also do. We were loading up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we had like 5 days leading into Milton where it was nonstop debris. Now, I think it was Pinellas County. They don't necessarily work 24/7, and so they padlocked one of the places where you drop off the debris. So we had Florida Highway Patrol cut those chains, open those gates, and we just kept doing the debris. We weren't going to be stopped. So getting the debris up, I've seen disasters in other parts of the country and even some in Florida in the past where you'll have debris out there for years. I mean, Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas, there's still massive debris laying around everywhere. We want to take advantage of that and get it done. So just know, whether it's agriculture, whether it's homeowners, we're very mindful of that when these storms come. Yes, you stabilize, you save lives, you get the power back on, you get everything running again, but that there are needs beyond just what happens in those few days after the storm. So you can count on my support on that. We have this program activated. I'd urge anyone that can benefit to take advantage of it, and we'll continue to work with our elected officials in the legislature to be able to land this and other issues that are so important to Floridians. And so I hope you guys have a great time at this great tradition of the Florida State Fair. It's getting crunch time for me. I got to make this decision about what, if anything, I'm going to bring home. I don't think my kids know I'm here today because I didn't say anything to them yesterday. So maybe I'll be able to just have a normal day without doing anything. But I fear if they figure out that I was here and I didn't bring anything back, that's going to be very difficult for Daddy to explain to a 4-year-old. So thank you. God bless you. Appreciate it.
Governor Ron DeSantis, ladies and gentlemen.